The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome in, everyone. Chris Temple here with you today. And in this discussion, I'm going to be joined for the first time in a while by my old friend Ross Orr. He is the CEO of BacTech Environmental. As you see here, BacTech is listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange, CSE, under the symbol BAC. Here in the US on the OTCQB under BCCEF. BacTech is a story I've covered for quite a few years right now. As many of you know, I'm of the belief very firmly that the field that it is in is about to hit the big time when it comes to both mining and when it comes to environmental remediation in many parts of the world. Now, before I get into this and then bring on Ross, the usual preliminaries, Ross and myself quite likely will be making what are construed as forward-looking statements. As the company has already experienced, and those of us who are shareholders have as well over the last few years. You think you're right at the pay dirt's doorstep and you get knocked back down a couple pegs. You got to get up and brush yourself off and go forward again. And one of these days we all believe it'll pay off. But between now and then, it's a risky company. It's a speculative company and speculative investment, notwithstanding all of the promise that I think there are signs we'll start to see some benefit from finally sooner rather than later. Likewise, here at the National Investor, I long ago recommended BacTech as a speculative holding, a good story stock, I believe, for the long term. But from time to time, we are paid by BacTech to do augmented media and copywriting and things like that, of which this video is a part. All that said, folks, the core part of BacTech's story really is a trend that is beginning to accelerate and get some serious money, serious policy support in different countries. And that is this, that similarly to seeing over the decades, practices in the upstream part of the mining industry get more modern, more efficient, allow the mining of lower grade ore, but still at a profit, etc. Now we're going to start to hear more about the downstream side of things. So when you hear these terms upstream and downstream in mining, upstream, of course, is getting critical minerals, metals, energy, and whatnot out of the ground at its initial source. Downstream comes to processing and things like that. And it's been that downstream area where, especially here in the US, we've really been at a loss and a disadvantage against competitors, most notably China, which has filled the void in recent years that the US has left. And even here in America, when we mine a lot of things, copper and rare earth elements and whatnot, even up to right now, companies that mine these things literally have to ship their concentrates to China and other countries because we don't have the downstream capacity. So you've got an economic and national security imperative to address this. You've got an economic imperative now where some methods to do this are now becoming economical and are transforming the whole food chain, really, and it will be to the benefit of the US and I think Canada and other nations as well that have mining industries, and especially to have mining waste, because another part of the market potential for BacTech, besides helping to make the processing of concentrates from new mines down the road more economical, more efficient, less of a footprint on the environment, etc. There are just innumerable places in the world where you have legacy waste, tailings as they're called, and things like that, from past mining, or where you have current small scale mining, mostly in places like South America and Africa, essentially from artisanal mining, which is allowed in various ways in those countries for people to earn a living. They don't have access to all the technology and equipment and so forth of large mining companies. And so you've got a whole subset within this industry of newly mined ore and tailings and concentrates that aren't being dealt with properly in a variety of ways. So that brings about new technologies. You've got hydrometallurgy, you've got bioleaching, which is what BacTech is all about. We'll give you a primer on that here in a second. But all of these things, folks, again, are coalescing with national security realities, with policy support, and with modern economics and technology to really augment an industry and improve an industry that has been in need of it for a long time. And as you'll be hearing specifically in the case of BacTech, the demand I think that we're going to see start to increase for its wares is coming from two chief areas, one being gold. You're going to learn about, or relearn as the case may be, the Tenguel Project in Ecuador. This is pretty much a development stage project that the company is working right now on getting the final financing for. The economics of this thing are phenomenal. The social work and everything that the company is already doing and will do once they're up and running in Ecuador are really going to be world class. And it's one of the reasons why BacTech and this project have really received the full-throated support of the government in Ecuador, tax breaks for a number of years early on when they start producing, et cetera, because this is going to be a great benefit to everybody involved, first off. And there are other places too where you've got similar situations where there are materials that have got gold but also have arsenic and other deleterious elements. And with BacTech's bioleaching process, they're able to render that arsenic inert, remove gold, silver, and things like that from it, pay everybody well, and everybody gets the benefit of having the environment taken care of as well with this thing. It's a great, great concept, great idea, no brainer, frankly. Beyond that, and a more recent development with BacTech, and this is really exciting stuff. They filed a patent application and have been doing a lot of work before and since that is going to transform base metals and other products in a very, very big way. You'll hear Ross talk about the Sudbury Basin up in Ontario, an area of historic nickel mining and some copper and cobalt and things that go along with that. And there are tens of millions of tons of old legacy mine waste that needs to be gotten out of the environment. And with BacTech's process, they are going to be able to take that, every bit of it, and turn it into one type of saleable product or another, as well as have some saleable byproducts with the process they're going to use. I'll let him explain the science to you. It's not overly complicated. But again, another example of how time, economic realities, policy imperatives to increase the amount and volume of metals that we have when we're short of so many things, clean up the environment, all of these things are all coalescing now. And I follow this quite a bit. We're going to be talking about this as one of many subjects coming up at the Better in Our Backyards Mining and Energy Expo as well in the Twin Cities from the 1st through the 3rd of October. I've been talking a lot about that recently. Hopefully you've paid attention to that. And if it's on your schedule's ability to accommodate, I hope to see you there. But folks, this is really exciting stuff. And again, after many decades of slow, steady improvement, I've told the story often. Here, I'll share a couple of graphic examples of this. You know, once upon a time, miners had an especially risky existence when they went to work. Picks and shovels and primitive conditions, certainly compared to today. These days, especially with large enough mines, you don't have anybody underground in some cases. You've got electric vehicles underground that are doing the, blasting and collecting of ore and things like that. You've got instead of a miner underground with a, the light on his hat and a pick and a shovel, he's sitting in a air-conditioned control room with a joystick as if he's playing a video game, or she, as the case may be, and they're controlling mining equipment this way, and mining equipment that is state-of-the-art, far more advanced, etc. So again, this has gone on for a long time in the upstream part of the industry. Now it's catching up downstream. And finally, at last, if everything goes well, BacTech is a kind of a company and a story that I think is going to benefit from that. And back with me again for the first time in a while is my old friend Ross Orr, the CEO of BacTech Environmental. Ross, hope you've had a great summer.
Yeah, it was a hot one, that's for sure, but good to be back.
Yeah, well, as you know, I've been up in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota, this part of the world, for over a month now. I'll be here until you and I rendezvous at the Better in Our Backyards Mining and Energy Expo, the 1st through the 3rd of October. We'll talk about why you're going to be there as we get into our conversation. But as I said before you came on, bioleaching is one of a handful of emerging technologies. They've been around for a while, a lot of times just in lab settings or small settings, but for a lot of different reasons, environmental, economic, policy, and all the rest, it's finally time for some of these technologies to start hitting the big time. And I think bioleaching is going to be one of them. For the uninitiated or people that aren't familiar with this, give us, the quick, dumbed down Cliff Notes version of what bioleaching is.
Our bugs eat rocks.
Yeah.
That's our standard. That's the only thing we show on our booths at investment conferences is just that because it definitely stops people in their tracks. But in essence, what's happening over 5 to 6 days in large stainless vats, the bacteria are attacking the sulfides or the glue that holds everything together. If you were trying to recover gold and silver just using direct cyanide, you'd get probably less than 5% because the gold is locked up. So in essence, the bacteria are liberating. I like to say it's like a brick wall. They're eating the mortar, and eventually, because the tank and the liquid in the tanks is very acidic, anything that's soluble in acid will do so, and anything that's not, like gold and silver, will go in a different direction. Once we get these liquid, the sort of the pregnant liquor, as they call it, we start adding limestone. And as the pH rises, the first thing that happens is the arsenic bands with the iron and drops out as a ferric arsenate. So we actually go looking for arsenic. We usually pass the miner going in the other direction because he's going, oh my God, arsenopyrite. That's not what I wanted. Right now, globally, there's not many places you can go to have high arsenic gold concentrates processed. We all know, of course, China is one of them, and they don't exactly pay a lot of money for the product. So,
Well, and that's a part of the reason why you have a great economic opportunity as well as one for the country of Ecuador for small miners in Ecuador. We're going to get to that in a second. But to kind of wrap up the science, just again, to give people just a general idea, most of the mining in the world for a lot of different metals, including gold and silver, does include arsenic and other deleterious minerals. If nothing else, that they, might be as a first matter in the rock, there might be high levels of it, might be a lot of it in the concentrates. And as you pointed out, you're going kind of the other directions of traditional miners because they're trying to stay away from that stuff. But you're going out there and saying, "Oh no, we got a process to make that all work." Uh,
well, if they want to live and eat, they are
yeah.
going to mine arsenopyrite, right? I mean, that you can't stop somebody from digging gold out of the ground. Unfortunately, they reluctantly accept lower prices for their product. They know that they're being um, taken advantage of. And so what we're going to provide is an in-country processing system that keeps the value in the country. Why ship 40% of the value overseas, to somebody else when you can actually do it at home? We'll be very competitive with the Chinese because we don't pay export taxes. We don't have to ship concentrates halfway around the world. We don't have to pay an import tax into China like the buyers do. So it's really just a function of getting the first one up and running. I know I say this all the time, but it is like a domino. I'm fending off proposals or questions every day from other countries in Peru and Colombia, in Chile. There are certain areas of the world where arsenic is just very prevalent in the ores that are mined in that area, the northwestern United States, again, Idaho, Washington State,
Right.
etc. Um, so, in addition, though, to that technology, which we've referred to as bioleaching for arsenopyrite, as you know, we've also filed this patent on the other stuff, so to speak, the
Yeah.
non-gold. And what we found is it's unbelievable, actually. It's crazy.
Well, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I do want to dive a little bit deeper into Tenguel. This is a project that you have already done an economic study on and so forth in Ecuador, but we will get to this patent application that you've got in because as soon as I saw that and you first started telling me the story months ago about this, Ross, I said, hey, this is really going to dovetail into public policy needs and desires in North America, both the U.S. and Canada, I think. And this could be a bigger story, the BacTech's biggest story, frankly, down the road. But I want to stick with Tenguel for a minute because your bioleaching process has kind of over time, and there's been false starts here and there. Everything's got to come together all at the same time, the technology, the economics, the customers, and so forth. But you've got this opportunity in Ecuador because like a lot of these other countries that you mentioned as well, Ross, you've got a pretty high percentage of the country's overall output presently for gold. We'll stick with gold for the moment. That doesn't come from major mining companies. There are a couple of big mines now, been up and running for a while in Ecuador, doing extremely well, and there's all kinds of upside in the country still, as I've said many times. But your target are the small miners, the artisanal miners, the ones that are, doing a 50 tons a day here and 25 tons a day there in small mines. And these are the ones that you're catering to. They're the ones that up until now have had to take really low ball offers from China to take this material off of their hands. Now you're coming in, you're going to do a lot better for them. So tell us about the Tenguel project and how you first got the not only the locals in Ponce Enriquez who see you as a great economic boon to that area when all of this is put together, but how much the government has been on your side down there.
Well, getting an EIS done in 7 months is an example of their commitment to getting this thing across the line. Unfortunately, they're not a wealthy country, and they have a lot of dealings with the IFC, and so they're not in a position to say, "Look, we'll guarantee your debt." I've asked, believe me. We're dealing with two things that have made the capital raise for the project difficult, and that is our balance sheet is, not strong, and I'll be the first to admit it. Not necessarily debt, but just not. There's no asset there to support a $20 million investment. One person said to me, if you can't make a bioleach plant work, what am I going to do with it? So, okay, fair enough. And the other, of course, are the struggles that the country's had over the last 2 or 3 years, where the narcos have figured out that this is the easiest way to get stuff going out of the country. But even that's starting to turn around a bit now with the U.S. I think Rubio was there over the weekend and basically was committed to helping the Ecuadorians expunge these ne'er-do-wells, for lack of a better term. Now, the feasibility study we did is at $1,600 gold. And what that feasibility study told us was it was a capex of 17 million, and we were going to make $11 million a year. We also have a 12-year tax holiday with the Ecuadorian government. Again, a commitment on their part to get this technology up and running. Now that gold's just cracked through 3,600, I think it's safe to say it's only a matter of time before we put the pin in the balloon here and get going.
Yep.
And so that's all I'll say about that at this stage.
I know
Uh,
there's a lot of discussions and moving parts and you're looking for the right fit. Not just someone who on bad terms would throw money at this, but this is such a lucrative project. And I think a good anchor going forward for BacTech that you've got to make the right deal as well. So,
yeah,
uh,
and today the numbers, even if you use I think $3,000 gold, exceeds the capex. We've actually raised the capex to 20 million just for inflation over the last 2.5 years.
right.
But the net is higher than the capex for the project. And a lot of people say, well, that can't be. I said, well, look, I didn't do the feasibility study. We hired somebody else to do it as an independent group. And it was also verified by Tetra Tech, which is a very, well-known engineering group globally. And so they did a sort of an audit on the work that we had done, and they came back and said, yeah, no, it's fine. It looks good. So with that said, we hope be, soon we'll put a shovel in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all looking forward to that. And it's important to point out too, folks, with this, we're not talking about BacTech and this Tenguel project in Ecuador as a mining project per se. The mining has already been done. The material that is full of gold and arsenic is there waiting for you, basically, and waiting for this plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in that respect, at least it's a no-brainer, and I've long been confident that once people really understand this, the right party's going to come forward and you'll be off and running. But I do want to segue now, Ross, into something that you mentioned a minute ago that is a more recent story coming out of the company, and that is the work that you've done with Dr. Miller, that's the main scientist on your staff, with the folks at Merarco and others over time. You've honed in on this process where, and I think it's certainly not the only place in the world where this is so, but you're honing in and using as an example the massive amount of tailings and waste from old, primarily nickel mining activity in the Sudbury Basin in Ontario, and what you've said that you can do and have already demonstrated to a very great extent is to take all of that waste, make several saleable products out of it. You're going to be liberating different metals and products. You'll have byproducts to sell, essentially taking this waste and making it disappear in a few different payables, cleaning up the environment. I mean, this is big stuff. And as I said before you came on, again, that this is an added policy imperative in Canada, in the US, and elsewhere. I mean, these regulators love, and you and I have been at meetings in the last couple of years, we've discussed this. Regulators love the idea, governments love the idea of being able to add iron, copper, cobalt, whatever, to what we're short going forward in our respective economies, and do it without new smelters, do it while cleaning up the environment. I mean, this is really big stuff.
Well, doing it without digging another hole in the ground at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah,
So, okay, so let's go back to the beginning here.
sure.
Uh, Vale, the Brazilian giant who took over Inco, also inherited somewhere between 80 and 100 million tons of pyrrhotite. Now, pyrrhotite is a sulfide mineral that is very volatile. It tries aggressively to oxidize itself. If you leave it out on the ground, it'll smolder. And so what's been happening for the last 100 years is the miners have been sort of separating the pyrrhotite from the pentlandite. Excuse me. And the pentlandite, of course, is the higher grade, easier to work with sulfide mineral that they've made all the nickel from over the years. And they separated the pyrrhotite and threw it into the lakes or buried it under 3 feet of, clay. Um, but there's a lot of value there. I mean, even at 0.85 nickel, there's $14 billion worth of nickel there. It's using $7 as a price. And it's just by sheer volume. So we were approached by Vale, and who also approached others and said, let's have a little competition here and see who can crack the nut to recover the nickel. First thing that we identified was that the nickel, copper, and the cobalt would not make money. You would not be able to operate that plant because it would just become a sinkhole. So Paul Miller and Nadia Nikicic and her team sat down and started looking at different ways or different additives to the bioleach process. And what they found was that through the addition of ammonia literally strips everything away from the iron, and it leaves you with a magnetite or a hematite that can be direct shipped to a steel mill. I mean, wow, right? There's another revenue source. The what we also found is that the ammonia marries the sulfur and you can produce an ammonia sulfate fertilizer, an organic fertilizer. Those two products, based on 1 ton of waste of pyrrhotite from the Sudbury Basin, account for 75% of the revenue from that 1 ton. Only 25% comes from the base metals. So it now allows you to, if you're already in production, you could put one of these plants on the back end of your existing mill, capturing what's going to the tailings and producing magnetite, organic fertilizer, and also grabbing that nickel that you've been losing all these years to lower your production base. I mean, your cost base. I mean, it's incredible. And I think the mines now in the Sudbury Basin are fairly high cost mines. I don't think they make money at $7 a pound. That's speculation, but um, I just don't see it. So the only thing that's left over is silica, which is effectively sand, and you can use that for paste backfill, uh, polymers, geopolymers, et cetera, et cetera. So technically, you are producing zero waste from 1 ton of tailings. Now, look at 80 billion tons on a global basis. This is not something that BacTech is going to start building plants for. What we're going to do is obviously we're going to license this technology on a global basis, whether it's by country or region by region. But we would expect probably the bigger engineering companies out there that can take these projects and run with them and build them at multiple times in multiple countries. That's the sort of group that we think will probably step up. Governments at this stage. So the next phase for us, of course, is to take something that we've done in a lab and scaling it up. And that's always been the problem in mining technology, is that nobody wants to stick their neck out there. What we come back with is we say, look, we're the bioleaching guys. That's what we do. We're marrying this particular technology of ours to existing technologies that already are out there extracting metals, like through precipitation or through whatever means. So we think it's very, very real that this could be scaled up to a much larger capacity than what we're talking about right now. I think the market is looking at it and saying, well, show me, right? I'm from Missouri, or wherever that expression is.
Right.
Um, like, show us it could be done, or I'm willing to wait until the patent is finally granted. Incidentally, no pushback from anywhere so far on this. Maybe I'm gonna you know tweak somebody into going, wait a second, we're doing that or something. I don't think so. Um, so the work continues up at Morocco with Nadia. We're tweaking and fine tuning. We also would get lost in the shuffle is we also filed a preliminary patent on any form of waste discharge not related to bioleaching, so smelting and roasting and pressure oxidation, anything that generates an iron sulfide waste that goes into a tailings. So there's many different aspects here that you can look at, obviously. Whether it goes onto the back of an existing facility, whether you build a plant right beside the tailings dumps in Utah or Arizona or Canada. I mean, I want to say the world's our oyster, but it's very enticing, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's been very exciting for us. Unfortunately,
Well,
not for the
yeah.
markets.
Well, look, we know that all over the world there are stories like in Sudbury, in the four corners of the U.S. There's been a simmering story for years, which is now appearing to be on its way to some better resolution, and that is of a lot of waste from past uranium mining during World War II. In that time frame. I mean, the stuff left out all over the ground everywhere. That needs to be cleaned up. It astonished me, and I shared the story with you while I was at this conference last month in August out in Casper, Wyoming. I got invited to be a speaker at the U 2025 conference, the Global Uranium Symposium put on by one of the sections of the Society for Metallurgy and Exploration, SME out there. And in a couple of different contexts, they were talking about how bacteria and bioleaching can enhance not only the recoveries of uranium from ores, but even the enrichment. And wow, when I first heard that, but then I got thinking about, well, that's the process of creating radioactivity in the first place. In part, is through microbes, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's remarkable. And as I said again before you came on, we've seen all of these advances over the decades in mining. And now it's time for these things to start hitting the downstream side for
Right.
economic reasons, for NIMBY reasons. I mean, it's going to be a whole lot nicer if this project that company is also going to be in the Twin Cities at Better in Our Backyards conference. You got a copper company right now that's producing cathode in Arizona without traditional smelting. But again, another modern way of doing a better job environmentally and economically of recovering metals. It's been a long slog for you, I know, and for a lot of people doing the stuff that you're doing. But I happen to be one that thinks that your time has come, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
I agree 100%. I mean, I'm amazed at some of these private companies that have been raising $100 million through venture capital. I'm going, hello,
Right,
and raising $1 million is like pulling nails out of oak for us.
right, right.
I think I've always sort of had a habit of always being early in things. I remember being involved in voice recognition software back in the early 90s before we got to the annoying stage we're at now where you can't talk to anybody real anymore. But
That's for sure.
it's we've been at it a long time. There's no question about it. But we do have a track record of building plants for others.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it didn't bring a lot of money in the door for us. But I think that's about to change. Like I said, the numbers for that Ecuador project are nuts. But you're right. The bigger story at the end of the day is most likely going to be the IP around, treating tailings.
Yeah.
Uh, and going back to where we were talking about, I started off talking about scaling up the technology. So we need to raise, or we have to find, I shouldn't say raise, find probably 30 to 40 million dollars US to build a demonstration plant. And I don't think that's going to I don't think it's going to be a major mining company because that's admitting they have a problem.
Right.
But from a government's perspective, there's every reason in the world, especially with all the talk in the US about, circular economy, critical minerals. Well, they're all sitting in tailings.
Yeah.
Uh, let's get at it, right? And as I say to people that I talk to about the demonstration plan, this is a modular technology. So even though we built something that maybe only starts off treating 20 tons a day to prove the commerciality of the technology, you can easily expand that. But think about the sheer size of these plants when you think about the fact that you're not concentrating anything, you're putting the tailings directly in their raw form. So these plants will, thankfully, they're modular because we can see these things expanding and expanding and expanding, and we don't produce any noxious gases to go with it. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just too utopian in my thinking.
Well, as with a lot of ideas, a lot of improvements in society and industry otherwise, and this is far from the first, they're just, and nobody can explain it. You can't predict how and when it's going to happen, but ultimately, the economics, the policy, and everything went out, and we have these new things. You mentioned voice recognition software. I touted a company way back in the late 90s called Zybernaut Technologies, which ended up going bankrupt, regrettably, but it was ahead of its time in a lot of the AI kind of stuff that's out there right now. So the imperative is clear to me, though, Ross, because I vividly remember, and you and I discussed it, I know at the time, and that's where I first met Nadia in person, was last spring at a Washington, D.C. conference. And the people who were there from then the Biden administration were all over the ideas of everything from old mine tailings to coal ash to everything you can imagine, where there are values to get out of stuff that's already been mined in this case. And again, I think that the big advances to come, as we've seen advances come from the upstream part of the mining and extractive industries over the years, better mining methods, cleaner mining methods, more efficient. Big companies that know what they're doing can mine copper and gold and things like that at a fraction of the grades that it used to take and do it economically because of advances in technology. This is going to be the next thing, the downstream side, where bioleaching, where hydrometallurgy, where a lot of other different things are going to be brought to bear. And again, this is a no-brainer when you consider that in many respects, like what you'll be doing in Ecuador, like what you could be doing in Sudbury and elsewhere, you're not only making money, but you're cleaning up existing environmental headaches. I mean, that's how do you argue
World.
with that?
It's the perfect world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and yet we sit here with a 10 million Canadian market cap because we're obviously not doing a very good job of getting the message out there.
Well, I think that again, the mining industry, and you alluded to this earlier, they've not stepped up right away on any of these things because they really haven't had a gun to their head to have to do it.
Yeah.
Now that the hammer has been pulled back on the gun, it's been done in economic fashions for policy reasons and otherwise. And again, because we've got to pull out all the stops, especially North America, to augment shortages of everything from nickel to copper to cobalt to silver to gold, you name it. And it's not going to be done just by mining. So I think that critical mass is approaching. And there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still money to be raised and alliances to be built. But I found it encouraging that there are now a couple of the bigger mining companies globally that are realizing that they need to glom on to some of these better ideas. And I'm hopeful that BacTech's going to be one of them.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Well,
Well, we'll be back, folks. There's a lot of moving parts here. We're going to break down a couple of them as time goes on and as events happen. Ross and I, as we mentioned a minute ago, will see one another. He's going to be coming and talking about what BacTech's working on at Better in Our Backyards Mining and Energy Expo. And you've already had some preliminary conversations with some key people, I think, haven't you, Ross?
I have actually, yes.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting list of people that reach out.
Yeah.
Not what I would expect, to put it that way, but and not necessarily in Canada and the United States either.
No, you've got elsewhere as well. I know that you've shared a couple of those
Lots of
stories.
problems everywhere. So
Yeah, and I look forward to those developing as well. So anyway, folks, as I said earlier, BacTech Environmental, they've been a long time recommendation of mine and a national investor. Obviously, speculative stage company, but pieces are starting to fall into place. A lot of work to be done, but a lot of promise here as well. So again, make sure that you check out the company. Follow them on social media, go to their website, etc. And of course, stay in touch with yours truly. We'll have additional near-term interviews with Ross when we break down individual parts of the story and a lot more. So Ross, thanks for your time today. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks over in the Twin Cities.
you bet. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Okay.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.